From the years 1965 to 1972, my grandfather, Scott David Gorton, served in the United States Navy ranging from the ages 18 to 25. The vessel my grandfather served on, known as the USS DeSoto County LST 1171, was a DeSoto County class tank landing ship built for the United States Navy during the late 1950s. She was the lead ship of her class of 7, named after counties in Florida, Louisiana, and Mississippi, standing as the only U.S. naval vessel to bear the name. DeSoto County was laid down on September 15, 1956, at Avondale, Louisiana by Avondale Marine Ways Incorporated. She was launched on February 28, 1957, sponsored by Mrs. C. Horton Smith, and commissioned on June 10, 1958, with Lieutenant Commander Daniel A. York in command. She was then decommissioned on July 17, 1972, and loaned to Italy, where she was renamed and now known as the Nave Grado L9890. She had her final disposition in 1989, where she was sold for scrapping by the Italian government. By May 8, 1992, she was struck from the Naval Register. During battle, for almost the entire length of her active service, DeSoto County was assigned to the Amphibious Force Atlantic Fleet. She interspersed operations off the east coast of the United States with frequent deployments to the Caribbean and the Mediterranean. The tank landing ship saw brief service in the Vietnam Theater of Operations in 1969 and participated in the Vietnam War campaign during war. DeSoto County earned one Meritorious Unit Commendation for service with the 6th Fleet in the Mediterranean and one Battle Star for Vietnam War service. In December of 1965, my grandfather was notified that he would be drafted into the United States military. He decided that instead of taking his chances in the Army or Marine Corps, he would join the Navy by default, even though it meant he would be enlisted for a longer period of time. He felt that his safety would be more ensured in the Navy. In January of 1966, he enlisted, and by May 5th of 1966, he officially went active. In fact, this May 5th, 2016, is the 50th anniversary of the day he went active in the United States Navy. After spending 13 weeks in Great Lakes, Illinois at Recruit Training Command, he was granted 2 weeks leave before reporting to a school in Norfolk, Virginia. They spent about 4 weeks there before reporting back to their ship in September. In late September, the ship was deployed to the Dominican Republic to rescue troops that were stationed there for peacekeeping purposes during civil unrest in the island. As they arrived to the island, they were actually shot upon, but very mildly, and nothing to cause any damage. My grandfather compared it to trying to fire at a house a mile away with only a BB gun. After 15 days, they returned back to home port in Norfolk, Virginia. In late November, the ship was deployed to Gulfport, Mississippi, to train a battalion that was of potential Seabees. Here they remained for about 2 weeks before returning back to home port. In late January of 1967, the vessel was dispatched to the Caribbean for gunfire practice off of the Puerto Rican coast. Puerto Rico was the main second port of DeSoto County, causing the vessel to venture out into the Caribbean region quite often. Puerto Rico was the second home from Norfolk, Virginia, to many of the men on board. They spent about a month here before returning to home port once again. In early March, the troops prepared the ship for their 8-month deployment to the Mediterranean. Their first port was a U.S. naval base off the western coast of Rota, Spain, where they spent 10 days before being deployed to the next port. Izmir, Turkey was their next stop. Here, they actually visited the ancient sites of Ephesus and other historical locations nearby. Next, they ventured to Petros, Greece, where they spent about 2 weeks before being deployed to their next location. In mid-October, they entered their port in Naples, Italy, where they spent only about 10 days. Next, they arrived in Toulon, France. They only spent about 10 days here as well, but as they departed there, they practiced military exercises with the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, also known as NATO, for approximately 1 week. They then briefly stopped in Valencia, Spain, but soon left Spanish waters in mid-December to head into Genoa, Italy for their Christmas and New Year's leave. While in Genoa, an excursion was sponsored in Munich, Germany for Navy and Marine Corps personnel that seek to go. Naturally, my grandfather went and spent about a week there touring and training during his leave. In mid-January, they returned back to Rota, Spain, where they met the vessel that they were told would be replacing them. However, after 6 weeks, relief arrived and they returned home in March of 1968. After spending about 6 weeks in port, there was a change in the new commanding officer and executive officer. Their first deployment with the new officers was to Puerto Rico for special seas training. Upon return, the ship was out of service due to major repairs and equipment updating, lasting until December of 1968. In January of 1969, it was sent off to the Virginia Capes for sea trials, where they tested new engines, new radio equipment, and things of that nature for a series of about 10 days. They headed on a very brief trip to the Caribbean for a quick gunfire practice off of the coast. Upon return to home port, the ship was being prepared for a 5-month deployment to Panama and the Southern Caribbean, with battalions of Marines on board as well, to be transported to Panama for jungle warfare training. These Marine men were eventually Vietnam War bound. While there, they did various sea exercises and actually escaped a hurricane that, even though 300 miles away, they still experienced the harsh wave and sea conditions. Also, some had the opportunity, my grandfather being one of them, to accompany another vessel through the Panama Canal and head from the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific Ocean for extra hands and help on deck. My grandfather thoroughly enjoyed being a part of this small expedition or even getaway. After returning to home port in mid-October, my grandfather approached his final detail in the United States Navy. In mid-January of 1970, the USS Newport LST-1179 was being commissioned shortly thereafter, and their commissions company attended a training school in Pennsylvania to learn the ways of the ship, as many were transferring to the USS DeSoto County LST-1171. On January 30th, 1970, my grandfather was separated from active naval duty. He remained in inactive reserves until January 6, 1972, when he then received an honorable discharge as a petty officer second class with the title of Yeoman second class. During my grandfather's time in service, his duties included safekeeping and filing of all the classified materials that went aboard the ship. He was considered to have the highest security clearance for any non-commissioned officer. My grandfather thoroughly enjoyed his service in the United States Navy. He talks about it all the time and always says how he would have loved to stay longer and hopefully worked himself up in the rankings. However, due to the situation of the war in Vietnam, he did not want to put his safety at risk if not needed, which is what initiated his deployment. After the war, Scott met and married his wife Marianne, who he is currently happily married to today. He is the beloved father of 2 kids, Elizabeth and David, and grandfather of 6 children, Alexa, Christo, Olivia, Eddie, Robert, and Emma. Even though my grandfather loved serving for our great nation, he loves the family he was able to build after his time in war even more.